session is on tracking engagement with ArcGIS Open Data. We're on the Open Data team. We work for Esri out of the R&D office in Washington, D.C. And today we're going to talk about engagement, tracking engagement, more specifically how our team uses Google Analytics. My name's Markham, and this is Daniel Fenton. So before I talk about Google Analytics, I'd actually like to talk about this somewhat older concept called telemetry. And the idea and purpose of telemetry is, I guess the textbook definition is the process of recording and transmitting the readings of an instrument, collecting data at remote or inaccessible points and transmitting to receiving equipment for monitoring. So basically, gaining information about a place where you are not. So this could be something like putting a weather balloon up into the atmosphere to measure temperature levels, humidity levels, putting sensors on the ocean floor to see salinity, that type of thing. So how does that apply to the web? You have deployed websites, and you want to know how they're being used. They're not on your local machine. They're being accessed all over the world. And through tracking, telemetry, measuring things, you can gain information about how people use and operate your website. And by gaining information about how your website is being used, you can work to improve that website iteratively. So here comes Google Analytics to help us solve the problem. Instead of having to write scripts yourself and send them to some sort of centralized repository to track all of this data, Google can do that for you. It's a web software that's been around for about a decade. It's currently the most popular web analytics service on the web. And what it provides for you is a tracking ID and a snippet of code that you can inject into your pages or certain components that you have to measure actions, events, usages, and all of that type of thing. To give you more information about who's using your website, how did they get to your website, on which page did they leave your website. So pretty useful stuff if you want to optimize where you're going. Here's a pretty classic cycle in terms of improvement in most disciplines, but it's useful here as well. First step is to measure the information, so to gain this information, to learn on it, so to analyze it, to gain insights, and then based on those insights to take action. And then you measure again. What did our actions do? Did it actually improve the user experience? Did people stop leaving the website from this page because we made a decision? So it's good. And then here is a series of resources. This deck will be publicly available after the Dev Summit, but Google is good at covering itself. There's a lot of resources out there that will tell you how to stand up a Google Analytics account, how to inject that into your web page. There's some useful YouTube videos as well. So I'm going to get out of PowerPoint and into the actual interface. So here's the Google Analytics dashboard. What happens is you'll have a user account, so your Google account, and you can tether, this is just my personal account, I can view different user groups. So basically, ArcGIS Open Data is the product that we work on, and hidden in here are all the pages and sites that we like to track. So in our dev environment, our QA environment, and production as well. And this is a playground account that I set up last week that we're currently in, and you can tether a series of websites and pages to that account. So it looks like I can make 50 sites that I want to track, and I'm currently at 9 of that. So let's stand up an Open Data site. Open Data is the product, again, that we work on, and the purpose of this site is to make it easier for cities, communities, and governments to share, analyze, and discuss data. So here's our admin tools. If you've got an ArcGIS Online account that is org-enabled as Open Data, you can just hop right in and get going. So let's call this something like Tracking Demo 5, exclamation point. And we can customize this URL into something fun, tracking yay demo. I'm going to grab this URL because Google Analytics actually wants to know what the URL or the domain information of the site that it will be interfacing with. And I'll hop back into Google Analytics. And from the property dropdown, I'll just select Create New Property. And all I need to give it is 2 pieces of information. That's the name of the website that I'd like to track, so tracking demo, and then the actual website URL. I'll click Get Tracking ID, and it'll generate a key that I will use to inject into my web page to send information back to Google Analytics to give me information about what was happening at that page. So we've got a pretty easy interface here. Just click that right in and then create your site. This will cook up a series of things, including an ArcGIS Online item, as well as domain information related to your website. And what you'll get once this is made is a cookie cutter, out-of-the-box. Actually, let me mark this as a public site first, and then I'll preview it. And what you get is an open data site. And you can work to customize this, but you can tether data sets, groups, any kind of charts, applications to this site. But what do we want to know? We want to know who's using it and how they're using it. So I've just grabbed that URL of a site that I just made. I'm going to plug it into a different browser so the session is seen as different. And Google Analytics will be able to recognize that I viewed it. So once more, for all the money this time, let's go to the Overview tab in Google Analytics. And it looks like nobody has ever gone to that site, which makes sense because it was just made in the last 2 minutes. But I'm going to navigate here from Firefox, load the page, and we should see, yep, there we go. So about 10 seconds ago and moving farther back into the past, we have a page view. So that took about 5 minutes to make an open data site, get a Google Analytics key, and plug that analytics key into the site. So now we have an active link that we can use to gain information about that site. And I'll let Daniel go into a bit more depth about how we've decided to measure what's important within open data using that key.
Thanks, Markham. That was enlightening.
It's pretty loud.
Yeah, it's really loud back there. We're gonna try to keep our composure through this adversity of this really loud presenter behind us. Yeah. It might be Mansour Rod. He's always a little high energy and loud. Kind of sounds like him. All right, so I'm going to pick up where Markham dropped off, and we're just going to go through the Google Analytics user interface and talk about specifically how that applies to ArcGIS Open Data. All the events and specific ways that we track things are going to be applicable to our version 2.0 sites. So if you have an older site, 1.x, you'll see a note in your admin that you've got an older site. Analytics are still in there, but they're tracked a little bit differently and not as well, because this is our second go at really making sure that events are really relevant for you and represent the things that are meaningful engagement on your site. So I'm going to start out with the real-time view here. Real-time view is not the most useful, but it is one of the most interesting, especially if you have an event going on. I'm actually going to go and look at the events page. And this is actually just going to show you how interaction is working on our site. So as I search for, let's say, something like water on our umbrella site, you'll see that a hero query comes in. And a hero query just means that search, that main search. You know, familiar with the hero image, that big thing takes up the whole space. It's just our hero query. We'll track these header queries a little bit differently, but they'll all flow down into site search. So you can track search terms, and I'll show you that later. As I select a data set, that's going to be recorded as a page view, not as an event, so you won't see it show up here, but it will show up in other places. Let's pick one that has a little bit more attributes. Cool. So everything we track in here, we will pick up the data set that it's happening on, the individual attribute that it's happening on, and what the thing is that's happening. So in this real-time view, you can see that an event of category data, which is really anything like filtering or clicking on attributes, clicking on points of the map, those are all data events as we've categorized them. Everything will have the data set and the attribute and even the object ID of the feature, if that's applicable. So you can really drill down in some of the more advanced views and see like what exactly are people interacting with on your site in specific data sets and things like that. We will track even if someone, let me get rid of that, if someone clicks on the API view, because we think that's really high value. If someone goes to your site and takes the API, they're actually building something with it. So it's really important for us to track. And we spent the extra effort to make sure that when someone actually hits Control-C, we'll get that there's an API category of GeoJSON Same goes for someone using the API Explorer. We'll actually track what query did they actually do. Maybe not the most useful thing, but the fact that they're using the API Explorer and trying out queries should be a really good sign for you. And if you see certain data sets where people are trying that out, that's a good indication that developers are interested in your site in this specific data set. So maybe something to engage on, or make sure that the metadata is really good, the attributes make sense, the data is up to date. Really target how you're spending your time improving your sites based off of the analytics that you have available to you. So there's a lot of other events, and we'll see those as I go into the top events section, but they're generally categorized as data, search, content creation, ArcGIS, as in things like sign-ins. Next tab is audience, and that's going to tell you about how many people are on your site, although not just people. There's a couple of important concepts here. You're probably familiar with page views. That's been around for a while. It's not really the preferred way to track things in terms of how many people are using your site and how often it's used. Google is really preferential of the sessions metric. And a session is anytime someone has used your site within a half-hour period. So when a user hits your site for the first time, they're going to get a tracking ID, an anonymous tracking ID. And if they use it any time within a half hour, that's one session. They come back the next day, that's another session. So it's not the number of users. That would be this users count, which is the number of uniques that you might be familiar with. But sessions is how often it's used. And you can go in an audience and see some other high-level information. But the major thing I want to point out on this view is that everything is scoped by time with your top right. So sometimes you'll see like no traffic at all. And you're like, what's the deal with that? Remember to pay attention to the context of the time that you've selected. So I like to look at the last 30 days typically for making decisions about how much is mobile typically, or what browsers are people using. I always like to look at least 30 days of data. All right, so I'm going to jump into the User Explorer. And I think the User Explorer is really interesting because it lets you follow an anonymous user through all of their sessions and see what they're doing. So I have this organized by sessions. So this top user here used the site 28 times in the last month. This is a really engaged user. So we can see how they're using it. We can see how they've come into the site. So they landed on the home page, they did a search, and they viewed the search for broadband, so that's what they were looking for. Looks like they refined their search. They looked for something else. They viewed a data set. You can see kind of all the things that they're doing over their different sessions and kind of get to know users anonymously. This to me is a really interesting user. They're looking for all kinds of different data and downloading it on the site. But you can also see, are they interacting with it? Are they just doing downloads? Or, I want to find a user that's done, I want to find a user that has accomplished specific goals on our site, like use the API. What other things are they doing? How did they get there? We could track that through the User Explorer. Users flow is another important view, and I'm going to go to full screen on this because it might be pretty small at this point. User flow is something that allows you to track how people are navigating through your site. And the key thing to look at here are these drop-offs. So if you've got a lot of drop-offs at /datasets, that means that users are probably not finding what they look for after search, because /datasets is where they land after search. So those are the things to pay attention to, are where are people dropping off. If they're mostly dropping off on that homepage, maybe you need to rework your homepage and help people who haven't been on it before kind of understand how to get into your site. Clearly, that's something that we need to do with opendata.arcgis.com, is help people who are not familiar with it, explore the site, find out what's there, build a more engaging experience, because of 19,000 sessions, 11,000 immediately left the site. That's not so great. At least most of them made it past /datasets when they were doing a search. So that's pretty good news. But the drop off on the homepage is not so great. So that's the audience section. There's a lot more into there, but I obviously can't do exhaustive on that. I'm just trying to hit the highlights here. Acquisition is all about how are people getting to your site. Are they getting there by typing in the URL? These are real returning users who their browser has saved the URL. They've typed it in. I would show up as a direct user for opendata.arcgis.com because I typed that in to my browser. Organic search is if they've used Yahoo, Bing, AltaVista, Google. That's going to come in through organic search. Referral is going to come in through another website. So we can drill down into referral. Those are really interesting to me. Most of the referrals to opendata.arcgis.com come from Esri. Big surprise. However, a good chunk of them in the last month came in through Wikipedia. I've been trying to figure that one out. Haven't been able to figure that one out through this, but cool. Somewhere on Wikipedia is linking to data on opendata.arcgis.com. That's awesome. We can dig more into referrals and some of these other views, but we can also look at social, which I think is interesting. We get a good bit of social traffic through Twitter and Reddit. And some of the more advanced views, you can actually see how people are coming in, navigating in through those different social platforms. All right, so behavior. Behavior is important because it tells you about which content people are using on your site. And this is something that's actually really improved since we've moved to V2, is what you can see in the behavior section. Previously our URLs would look like basically an unreadable ID, just a random series of 32 numbers and letters. That would show up in the page. That's the route, /dataset/ whatever. Since version 2, our URLs look like this. And on your own site, you won't have this short URL or short name for your organization. You'll just see /dataset/vision0. So we can actually see that this is, of all the datasets, this is the most viewed page on our site. So people are really digging that Vision 0 data and coming into it. It's probably linked somewhere else, is why it's getting so much traffic. But that's really useful. We can see high-level things like search terms, and I'll show you more of the search term view, but people are searching for pedestrians and transportation, and they're going to the Vision 0 dataset. I wonder if these things are related. They are. I'm sure that they are. And we can look at top events that are happening on our site. So this is another kind of benefit of going to V2, is that the events are all organized into coherent categories that kind of make sense to the person viewing the analytics. It's less of a this button was clicked and more this thing was done on our site, like someone created a story map or someone downloaded a data set. And I'll jump into events more in a minute and see how we can look at that. But those are all there through this behavior section. What are people doing on the site? Behavior. So I'm going to jump into our events section so we can dive a little bit more and answer a question that a lot of people have on their open data sites is, what are people downloading? So download is the third highest category on our site. And if I want to see the data sets, what I'm going to do is jump into event label. Yet another benefit of upgrading to V2 is that the events are actually labeled with the dataset name versus the ID that you'd see before. So we can actually see that Vision 0 is the most visited dataset. It's also the most downloaded dataset. No surprise there. We can drill into that further and see how that breaks down. So zips, aka shapefiles, are the most downloaded type, and shapefill, I don't know how that got in there, but we can actually break this down and see how things are being downloaded. And I can actually, going back a page, I can see overall how that shapefile, CSV, KML, and GeoJSON breaks down, as well as TIFFs and other things that are downloadable on ArcGIS Open Data. So that was the event action that I selected. So events are labeled with their dataset name pretty much everywhere throughout, no matter what type of event they are. In ArcGIS Open Data, they're labeled with the dataset name. And then the action is kind of the thing that they did, which in this case is download a zip or a KML or shapefile. Jumping back to those top events, we can see, for example, let me expand this. We can see which datasets people most often create a web map for or a story map. So remember that event label. So 10 times web maps and story maps have been created on this Metro rail line stops dataset. as a web map every time. We can go back and see how that story map web map breaks down. And so in the last month, 185 web maps were created on this site, and 16 story maps were created. Maybe we need to make story map look a little cooler, give it an icon or something. Or explain what it is. Maybe people don't know what a story map is. Google Analytics lets you test hypotheses. So if you see that something is not to your liking, you can make a change and measure, did it improve or did it get worse? Help you kind of take a data-driven approach to improving your sites. Going back into site content, I just want to show that really quickly. We can see how where people are landing on the site. So are they coming in through a data set? A lot of people are coming in through a data set to the site. So main parcels, this URL has probably been shared around. Where are they exiting? All good, really important stuff in site content. To me, the behavior section of Google Analytics is the most valuable because of those events and site content. And site search. So I'm going to jump into the search terms, which is going to show us some key things here. I'm going to show you how often did people enter in specific terms, how many pages did they view after that, search exits, which means that they searched for something and then they just left. Search refinements is, they corrected the search. So if I started with pedestrians and then I immediately changed my search to pedestrian, that's a refinement. Time after search, how long are they on the site after search? So we're seeing a lot of really good stuff around pedestrians, actually. So people are coming to opendata.arcgis.com, searching for pedestrians, and on average are staying on the site 10 minutes after that. They're creating web maps from it. Like this is a data set that's doing really well on our site. Main GeoLibrary, on the other hand, is a data set that is doing terribly, or a search term, excuse me. We can tell that we really do not have what these people are looking for because the search results were so bad that instead of refining their search, 40% of people just left the site. Bye. They're gone. Not so good. So maybe we need to look at that and see if that's a content gap, or maybe it's a metadata gap. Maybe we actually have the world's best main GeoLibrary data set, but we called it, Northeastern Spatial Bookhouse, and we're just missing it. These are things that you can figure out. What people are looking for is really important, and search exits really identify those gaps. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and I don't have it set up in this view, so I need to jump to another one, is our conversions. So we've actually set up a bunch of goals on our site. So what are the really valuable things that people do? And we've assigned kind of a straw man value to it to see how these things are going. So you can create goals in your settings for this, and I'm not going to go into that too much, but I'll just show you what this looks like. So getting an API is a big goal for us. Actually interacting with features or creating charts are goals. So you can set these up and create a value, internal, and see how you're doing on certain things and see what you want to improve. And that's all I have prepared for this. And now I want to know if anyone wants me to answer a specific question about how to track something on our site, or is there another screen in this that you want me to talk about more, or anything you want to go back on, let me know. Yeah.
It's really hard to hear. Let me hand you this.
Loud.
Here, you can hold it if you want.
Sorry.
You're fine.
You got to stand behind her, like at the plenary.
So is it about a similar routine to kind of do this when you want to track ArcGIS?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, just hold.
I can't hear over there.
I know, it's
people
so
next
loud.
door. So is it similar to how to track it off of ArcGIS Online also? Data sets on ArcGIS Online, is it about the same as what you showed here for Open Data?
No. The tracking for data sets on ArcGIS Online, so you'll see like the number of times items are viewed or visualizations and things like that, is happening through an internal system. It's not Google Analytics.
We come this way. We got bit by that speaker last time. No, yeah. Yeah. Don't take it too close to that. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. So is it possible to tracking the user who log in and who use?
Which user?
Let's say, yeah, which user?
It is possible, however, we do not do that. It's a best practice to anonymize your users. And that's what session ID is used for. So we don't want to track what, or have the ability even to track what data sets people are specifically looking for. That's a big kind of privacy violation in our view. But through client IDs, you don't know who the person is, you don't know what they're looking for, but you can see things that a user is doing. So if you remember, as I looked at that user explorer in the in the audience section. It's a client ID. So I'm not going to know that this is DM Fenton, but I'm going to know that it's 15609, blah, blah, blah. And I can see all 28 sessions that they had in the last month. And I think if I drill back even further, I think that these client IDs live a long time. We'll see if that changed. It ends in 22. So someone else is on the site more than last month, but they live a long time until people kind of clear out their local storage and their cookies. Yeah.
Anyone else? Cool. Well, Daniel could go all night, but I think we'll let you go. Just want to give off the sense of how powerful this tracking is and how well some developers on our team have integrated it into our product.
As Markham said, it's track, learn, act. So use data to improve your sites. Use data to sell your story and show how well open data is being used for your organization. Use it to figure out which data sets are good, which ones are bad, which ones are missing. There's tremendous insight into this, and we've made it very easy for you to set it up. Just grab that Google Analytics key and plug it in. You have very little to lose just by all of this, even for us, is free. I mean, that's pretty cool.
And if you have any questions, feel free to come up. This deck will be online later, and send us an email, reach out. Thanks.